So in a previous video, you learned about Jim Cummins' BICS versus CALP hypothesis about language proficiency. It's now time to see that in action. So I want to give you a real life scenario, and we're going to call our student Juanito. And Juanito is a 5-year-old coming into school for the first time, hasn't been in preschool, and is coming from a Spanish-only speaking family. And what I want to do is draw what his language icebergs would look like. So here's our ocean. And if we have a 5-year-old coming in, not speaking English at home, and hasn't had preschool, isn't reading yet or writing in Spanish, maybe can write his name, and that's about it. If I'm going to look at his language icebergs, in Spanish, he probably has his oral skills in Spanish. So this would be his BICS in Spanish. In terms of the CALP, and remember we've learned that BICS always develop prior to CALP, in terms of his CALP in Spanish, having number sense, being able to read in Spanish, it's not there yet. So we just have that tip of the iceberg. So Juanito comes into school, and this is what his language iceberg looks like. Now, I want you to think about if we put Juanito in an English-only speaking kindergarten. What's going to happen with his existing iceberg? If he's only hearing all day long in English, is that going to help him develop his oral fluency skills in Spanish? No, right? Is it going to help him develop his academic knowledge in Spanish if he's only hearing things in English? No. So what are we going to be doing if all day long, if he's hearing the names of letters, if he's learning about basic addition and subtraction, if he's doing that all in English, then we're going to be working on developing his English iceberg. And obviously, if we're teaching in a language that he doesn't understand, the first thing that has to develop would be his BICS in English. And do you remember how long Cummins said on average it takes to develop your oral language skills in another language? I hope you said 2 to 3 years on average. Remember, there are exceptions. There are students who will acquire language faster, and there are students who will acquire language slower. So let's think about this. If I'm trying to teach him to read, and I'm saying, A is for apple, ah, ah, ah. B is for bat, ba, ba, ba. C is for cat, ka, ka, ka. And he doesn't know what is and for and cat and bat and apple. He doesn't know what those words mean. Is he going to be developing the academic skills? Or is he really first developing just his understanding and knowing, oh, apple means manzana. All right, I know what an apple is. That has to happen first, right? So look at Juanito now. And let's say he's on the quicker end of this. So kindergarten and first grade, by the time he's going into second grade, let's say he's developed pretty good oral skills for a 7-year-old. Doesn't mean he's talking to you about Dickens novels or Newton's laws of physics, but he can communicate about his family dog, his sisters, what he likes to do after school. So right now, going into second grade, look at what we have. We have a student who can talk to you about everyday things in Spanish and a student who can talk to you about everyday things in English. But in terms of the academics of reading, writing, being able to solve word problems in math, we don't have anything down there. Now, there might be a little bit, but this student is what we would call, Juanita would be called, a limited bilingual student. What does that mean? It means he can converse in both languages, but the academic content isn't there. And how do you think he's going to do in second grade, where we expect our students to already be reading and writing? We expect that they can read things in their social studies book, their science book. Juanito is not going to be able to do this. So basically, he's set up for failure unless there's some intervention to come in here and develop CALP. Now, wouldn't it be nice if life gave us a second chance? Let's look at and see if we could do a better job with Juanito. So same student coming in to us from a Spanish-only speaking home. So when he starts, his iceberg is going to look the same, right? He's going to be, these would be his BICs in Spanish. So I'm starting him off the same way. Now, what if I put Juanito in a bilingual classroom? And in a bilingual classroom, he's first learning to read and write in his native language of Spanish. He's learning math concepts in Spanish. If I'm doing those things, which part of his language iceberg am I working on? And I hope you said CALP, because you're right. And can I already go ahead and start to develop his CALP? Because he already has the language to be able to understand what I'm saying. So I can be doing math problems with him. There were 4 dogs. 2 went on a walk. How many dogs were left in the doghouse? If I'm saying that to him in Spanish, he's going to understand the words, as opposed to if I'm saying that to him in English and he doesn't know English. So if I'm starting to work on the academics in Spanish, I'm developing his CALP in Spanish. So he's getting those academic skills. Now, while I'm working on the CALP, can I also spend a portion of the day working on developing his oral English skills? So that, let's say, if we're learning about farm animals in Spanish, then I can be also taking a half an hour or so a day and working on teaching him the names of the farm animals, the names of a farm and a pig and corn and a horse. If I'm doing that and I'm teaching him the labels for things in English, which part of his language iceberg am I working on? I hope you said, oh, you're developing his BICs in English. And you are, if you said that, you are absolutely right. So I'm teaching him the labels for things that we've been talking about. Now, here is the amazing thing. If he's learned to read and write in Spanish, if he's learned number concepts, if he's learned how to form very beginning hypotheses, here is the amazing thing about BICs and CALP. Once he has enough of the vocabulary in English, this amazing thing happens with CALP. And that is that it transfers over. In other words, I don't know why I put my name on there, but okay. Let me move that. I want to move it over here. In other words, I don't have to teach him to read and write all over again in English. What I have to teach would be the different phonics, the different sounds, because there are different letters or letters that make different sounds from English to Spanish. right? But the kelp just transfers over. So let's again say we're on the end of this 2-year span. And now I have a student going into 2nd grade who can talk to me about basic things in English and Spanish, who is reading and writing in Spanish at grade level usually, and who is also reading and writing in English. Wow, what a difference, right? And it was the same exact student, Juanito. I didn't change anything about his background. What I changed in this scenario was the type of program that we gave Juanito. So I want you to really think about this because it's so important for us to realize the type of program that we provide to students has a huge impact on their language development. People think, oh, if we put Juanito all in English, he's going to do better. Actually, for the vast majority of students, we find that that is false. It delays their success and it creates these limited bilingual students. What we find is if we use the primary language of the student, in Juanito's case, Spanish, to teach the academic concepts in the language that the student understands, while we're also teaching English, in the long run, this type of student is going to have much more success. All right, in our next video, you're going to get to try this out and look at some cases.